Oh, I get those outside too. I had a baby goat this morning, so my dad's got pictures. I sent pictures to him on his phone, so it'll give you opportunity to talk to the guy in the sound booth, and he tries to hide back there. It's been a while, right? It's good to see everybody. I love you guys. Today, I'm gonna. Today, I planned this message and then I took another turn a long time ago. Right. Today, I'd like everybody to go to Deuteronomy chapter 6, everybody's favorite book, right? Oh, Deuteronomy chapter 6. I'm going to have to get accustomed to this. I apologize in advance. So I do the normal thing. I'll read through the whole chapter so everyone has the complete context. Don't fall asleep through this one. This one's important, and I'll show you why. Remember, they're all important. You're right. You're right. Thank you from the front row. The Well, people have a tendency to glance over things. And we, especially reading through Deuteronomy, like it's one of those books where it's sometimes, if I'm honest, the first time I read through Deuteronomy, I had a lot of questions and I was like just wanting to get to the next one, right? Or Leviticus. You read through Leviticus and you're like, what does any of this mean? I have no idea. Well, it has meaning and has value. It just takes time to dig through those things. So in Deuteronomy chapter 6, what's interesting is, the story of Moses. Everyone likes the Exodus story. And then you hit Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, and you go, oh no, here we go. So what leads up to this, what's about to happen, is Moses has freed the people, and guess what? At every turn, every time he tells them to do something, guess what they do? What they want to do. They're stubborn. They're stubborn. And God's like, why did we even pick these people? What are we doing? So in chapter 6 here, this is where God kind of tells them what the meaning of the rules are and why they should have them in the first place. And this gets summed up by several other prophets and even Jesus himself in the Bible later on. So without further ado, Deuteronomy chapter 6. Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land to which you are going over to possess it, that you may fear the Lord your God, you and your son and your son's son, by keeping all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, all the days of your life, and that your days may be long. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And when the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you, with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses full of goods that you did not fill, and cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and are full, then take care lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve, and by his name you shall swear. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the peoples who are around you, for the Lord your God in your midst is a jealous God, lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. You shall diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God, and his testimonies, and his statutes, which he commanded you. And you shall do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may go well with you, and that you may go in and take possession of the good land that the Lord swore to give to your fathers, by thrusting out all of your enemies before you, as the Lord has promised. When your son asks you in the time to come, what is the meaning of the testimonies and the statutes and the rules that the Lord our God has commanded you, then you shall say to him, then you shall say to your son, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And the Lord showed signs and wonders, great and grievous, against Egypt and against Pharaoh and all his household before our eyes, and he brought us out. He brought us out from there, that he might bring us in and give us the land that he swore to give to our fathers. And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive, as we are this day. And it will be righteous for us if we are careful to do all this commandment before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us. There was a lot of Lord our gods in there, wasn't there? It's a whole lot. There's a whole lot in there. Let me try to untangle it a little bit. You guys all got it? If you got it, I'll just go ahead. Because there's a lot. There's a lot in there, and I actually read this in Hebrew, and it's even more profound in Hebrew. Okay, so this, has anyone ever heard of the Shema? Shema? That's the Hebrew word to hear, okay? Now, in modern English, we have an equivalent. In Greek, they didn't. Hearing and listening was the same thing. Now, is there a difference between hearing someone and listening? Like when I've got a million things going on at the house, and my wife goes, hey, are you going to pay the electric bill? Or can you swing the electric bill this month? I got a million things going on, and all I hear is every other word that she said. Was I really listening? Not really, right? I do it all the time. Guys, how many of us are guilty of that? Every one of us, because we got a million different things going on in our head, and then they pop that question at us. I think sometimes it's a trap, though. You know what I mean? They know that we're busy, and then they know we're single-minded in the first place, and then they throw that at us. So God seriously gets our attention here. He's trying to get our attention by talking. What does he talk about a lot? What's the instruction mainly? Love the Lord your God. But more than that, what is it spends almost a third of this chapter. If you do the math, almost a third of this chapter talking about your sons and their sons and those sons, right? And what are you supposed to be teaching them? How you understand it, okay? So this is, as Isaiah put it and as Jesus put it, this is the greatest commandment that God has for all of us. We fulfill the law by what? How do we fulfill the law and the nature of the law? Through love, right? That's how we do it. But how many of us really understand what that is? I think the ladies understand it more than we do. And this is where Hebrew kind of, it's funny, because in our modern context, we think about love and we think, oh, well, those two people love each other. Who cares what anyone else thinks, right? Like people use that argument against us all the time. Like you shouldn't judge people for being that way because they love each other, right? But is it really love? Because I can love my sister and not be in a sexual relationship with my sister. Because in our modern context, we equate sexuality with love. There's a huge difference. Animals don't love each other, but they make little animals, right? I've got proof. I've got pictures. I've got pictures from this morning, okay? And I think I got most of the stuff off my hands. But just trust me, about 30 minutes ago when I texted my dad, I was covered in just all kinds of fun, okay? And I love watching new life come into the world. It's one of my favorite things, okay? That's why I have so many animals at my house. It's one of the things I value the most. So when he moves this, here's the commandment, the statutes and the rules that the Lord God has commanded you. Teach them and do them in the land, okay? then he talks about the possession that they're going to get. He talks about possessing this place. And if you remember in this passage, he says what? He says, you're going to possess this place and you're going to own houses that you didn't build. You're going to have food that you didn't plant. You're going to have all this stuff that you don't deserve, right? Because how is it that these people have managed to build a nation out of wandering through the desert for how long? An entire generation? That's crazy. Even today, they're still a people. The Queen of England asked one time, she asked I can't remember what they call the Church of England has a guy who's over the church. He's kind of like a pope. Just forgive my ignorance on the way that their church operates. But their pope and the Church of England the Queen asked him one time, I think it was Elizabeth, she asked, what proof do we have that God is real? And his answer was simple. He said, the Jews. How do we know? The Jews. Because everything in the world has been set against them, hasn't it? Everything. Everything that you can imagine has been set against them. The most evil, divisive things that man could conjure up. World War II, anybody? I've started reading that book again, Man's Search for Meaning. Has anyone else read that yet? That's a good book. It is profound. So, anything evil that man could conjure up has been used against them. It's been a weapon yielded against them. And I still don't know why, what the reasoning is behind it, except that it's got to be supernatural, right? Because there's no logical reason why you'd want to wipe another people off the face of the earth unless they were your competitors. And I don't see them really competing with anybody. So, when God says he's going to give him this place, let me move to the love part. In Hebrew, the word for love is ahava. Okay, ahava. You guys can try it if you want to, class. Ahava. Ahava is the word for love. Now, here's something that's really interesting. To give is hava. So ahava is love. Okay, now I know I get on these Hebrew things and I start you guys' eyes start to glaze over and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to go slow. I'm going to try to walk through it. It's pretty intuitive language. Okay, so strength in Hebrew is Elohim. Okay, to say God's name over and over again that's in this passage is Elohim. When you attach alif to a word, you make it a more powerful word. Okay? So when you have Elohim, strength, and you add alif to strength, it makes Elohim. Okay? See what I'm putting down? So when you have to give, and you strengthen that word with alif, you have love. So what's the nature of love? It's to give. Well, Paul lays it out pretty good in Corinthians, right? He lays it out pretty good in Corinthians. Now, people who think of love as a sexual whatever, they over-sexualize everything in our culture already, right? Because it sells. But people who see love as a sexual thing, it doesn't make sense. Because what are you giving? You're not really giving anything. It's a mutual benefit, I guess. I've tried to reason through it and think what would be the benefit. Because when a male and female give to each other, they love, they're married, right? Because what do you do when you get married? You give up, you forsake everything for that person, right? So what have you given? Everything that you are. And what do you get in return? I don't know. My wife tells me to pick up my socks all the time. Right? I guess I get that. She tries to turn me into an adult every day. It's great. No, I'm just kidding. Trying to add some levity, okay? Sometimes I pick up my socks, really. I'm a half adult, okay? So anyway, so to give, the strength of giving is what the nature of love is. Can I love my children without being, dare I say it? I'm not going to say it. I can, absolutely. You women understand this because the moment you see your child born, what do? What's that emotion? It's more than an emotion, really, because what do? Everything that mattered before that point, what happens to it? Poof. It's like the writer of Ecclesiastes says, everything is smoke. And what is it? The only thing that matters when you look into your baby's eyes? Those baby's eyes. And what are you willing to give for that baby? Everything that you are. See, marriage is supposed to be exactly the same, but we've turned it into something else. We've turned it into a contract where we say that it's this or that, and we've denigrated it to the point where, well, anybody can do it now, right? Anybody. With love, without love, and we've turned it into a business partnership that is just not working. Why do you think that marriage is failing in modern society? Well, businesses fail all the time, don't they? And when you look at it like a business, guess what? You're gonna fail. If you don't have love in the first place, if you don't have anything that you're willing to give, and I'm not talking about just money or cars or this or that, I'm talking about your time, your effort, because those are the most valuable things that I've found in any relationship. You want to maintain a relationship, it's not by paying somebody a monthly fee. Okay, I tried that with my kids to get them to do chores, tried to do that. Like you pay them a allowance. Yeah, I've quit that program and I forgot even what the word was called. Because guess what? They don't do. It's like, well, Dad's going to give me the money anyway, so why would I even take out the garbage? Or how about this one, the blame shifting? It was his turn to take out the garbage today. Because guess what? My children, at their very best, they don't really understand what love is because they only understand how to take. You want to meet the most selfish people on the planet? Go introduce yourself to a 3-year-old child. Right? What are they willing to give? The thing that shocked me when my children were really little was that they went from this point of where they were always like, gimme, 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 to starting to copy Dad and give a little bit. Be like, Dad, do you want a piece of my candy bar? And I'm like, I'm coming to see you, Margaret, right? Elizabeth. Yeah, I'm coming to see Elizabeth, right? So that was one of the most shocking things to me is that how these little selfish monsters that I had that just like to destroy things. You guys laugh because it's true. You know it's true. I guess where we all were at one point. Yeah. It doesn't matter how much gray you have or how many wrinkles you carry. You were one of those little selfish monsters too that somebody decided to love and turn into who you are today. And now love is an interesting thing because it can be doled out in the form of discipline. Paul talks about this too. It's interesting that Paul talks about all these points. And I've made a lot of these points through Paul. But Paul says that if God doesn't discipline you, then are you really his kid? Because doesn't every good father discipline his child? Well, that's interesting, right? Because why do I have hard times? Well, why did they have hard times? They messed up. It's time to learn the right way. Like a good dad, he's patient. Because he loves you, he's patient. Like my dad, I don't know, don't cast judgment on my dad. He's a different person now. My dad used to be really hard on me as a child. I mean, that's my perception. But I thank him now for it. You know why? Because I kind of got my act together. I pick up my socks every now and then. My wife thanks him for it all the time. That was another joke. You can laugh if you want. You can laugh if you want. But I thank him for the fact that he disciplined me. Where would we be without the discipline of love? Nowhere. Yeah, and now we think that love is, we've mutated this word and turned it into acceptance. Love is not acceptance. Because if I really love you and I know you can be better than who you are right now, how evil is it for me to say, oh, you're exactly fine the way you are? Because that's what evil is. The only reason I would say that to anybody that I know ever, the only reason I would say you're exactly fine the way you are is because I've just won. It's been a competition between me and you, and I win. Ask Jacob and Esau how that worked out. Well, mainly Esau. Because that's the story of our lives is this we have this sibling rivalry going on all the time. And there's one side that says, you know what, I'm not going to compete. This isn't a competition between you and me. And the other side says, well, then I win. And what did you win? What's the grand prize for winning that competition? Nothing. There's no eternal reward. You feel good about yourself for 5 minutes. And then you wake up 30 years later to what? To the realization that you have nobody around you because you have been the most selfish person in the world. Love is not a black hole. It's not self-serving, right? It's kind. You guys know this. You guys heard it. Paul said it. It's one of the most revealing passages on what love is. So what's interesting to me is that when you take God's name, when you take strength and you add Aleph to it, that's the generic name for God, Elohim. So strength, strengthened is God. Now giving, strengthened, is love. Because what strength only gets you so far, but God can get you everywhere. Because he has both. Right? Remember the character traits of God? Steadfast love. That's one of his character traits. Because how many times have we given up on him and went our own way? And how many times has he had the right to just say, you know what, I'm done with humanity? Right? You can do that anytime because he's strengthened. You can't really get stronger than that. How many times did we deserve that? Now, when he says, this is the thing you guys are going to remember. Okay, the Shema is the most quoted prayer in the Bible. Shema means listen in Hebrew, or hear. Hear. It's like pay close attention. If I was to do an English equivalent. Like we can say, are you listening? Right? And then that just means I'm barely listening, I'm half listening. But are you hearing what I'm saying? Because that's what God is putting down here, okay? To quote the newer kids nowadays, that's what God's putting down. You better hear. But this is in the context of Moses speaking to them. He said, this is what God told me to tell you. And if you remember the relationship that Moses and God had, right? You go all the way back to Exodus. What was it God told to Moses? Moses wouldn't listen to what God had to say. God gets angry at Moses because Moses just comes up with all these excuses. I can't speak, I got a hangnail, I got sheep to take care of. He came up with all these different excuses. And God's like, all right, listen, here's what it's going to be. You're going to be to Pharaoh as I am to you. And Aaron will be your prophet. Do you think that arrangement ever changed? No. What's really interesting, and I'll challenge you guys to read the last chapter, Deuteronomy 32, 33, 34. Read those chapters and ask yourself who is speaking. Because it'll say Moses said, and then all of a sudden, midway through the conversation, it turns to, all of a sudden, is this Moses speaking or is this God speaking? Well, the answer is yes, right? Is it Moses or is it God speaking? Because Moses and God had a relationship, even though, you guys know Moses struck the rock, right? He wasn't allowed to go into the promised land. But who loved who in that relationship? God loved Moses before Moses learned to love God. And the turning point in their relationship is when God and Moses are up on the mountain, and God says to Moses, he says, let's wipe them all out. And we'll just start over with you, Moses. It'll be all right. And Moses is like, no, God, if you wipe them out, you got to wipe me out too. Because what did Moses understand at that point? Because what's the true nature of love? It's to give. And what was Moses willing to do? To give. And then God said, right answer. Well, that's not verbatim, but God said right answer. And then every time the people rebelled against Moses, guess who got really mad? Because Moses was God's man. Like people talk about the vengeful God of the Bible. Have you heard that before? I can't believe a God is that full of love and that vengeful. Come on, he killed how many people and this and that. It's like, okay, so how do you want it? Do you want it where evil happens and he doesn't do anything about it? Or do you want it where evil happens and he does do something about it? Because in your eyes, he can't win no matter what you do. And that's what we have a tendency to do. To go back to the first point, we try to overcomplicate things to confuse as many people as possible so that they don't see what we're actually up to. See, it's human nature. I've worked at Walmart for more years than I want to count right now. And I've found that people who have been in that a position, any position, whatever it is, long enough to where they get comfortable, what they have a tendency to do is try to make things more complicated than they really are. Right? Like if you sit in an office and you really like your office. I mean, it is a great office. You got the eagles, the eagle picture up on the wall, the corporate art that says courage, right? Don't fly low, or an eagle can't soar with chickens. You have that poster on your wall, and you got your pencils all sharpened and straightened. And you know exactly where your coffee's going to sit every morning, and you're sitting in that comfortable chair. And what you got to do is you got to make it as complicated as possible for the next person to come along and, you know, maybe put a different piece of corporate art on your wall, or borrow one of your pencils, or move your coffee from another spot. Because comfortable is the enemy of love. It is. Comfortable is its enemy. Because love forces us to step outside of who we are and give more than what we ever expected. So then the opposite of that would be, this is where I am not moving from this spot. Like, okay, exhibit A, Jacob and Esau, I already mentioned him, right? What was Esau willing to trade for the birthright? I mean, really, you boil it down, right? Funny pun, huh? You boil it down, he was willing to trade what? Comfort, wasn't he? For what? For the love of God? Really? It seems like a bad trade, don't it? But how many of us are willing to every day trade the adversity that God sends our way for the comfort that we think we know? I mean, we laugh about it, we make a joke about it, but how many of us really, you know, this is the way that my truck is supposed to be every day. And the moment that changes, the first thing we do is we get upset. We're like, how could this happen to me? Why would this happen to me? This isn't fair, because what are we? The all-important center of the universe. We're the black hole that pulls everything into us, because it's all about who? Us. And we forget that it's not. So why do you think God tells you to write it on your doorway, in your gates, in your forehead, in your hands? Why do you think he tells you? In your heart, yeah. Why? Why do you think he tells you that? Because we are so prone to our selfish desires, aren't we? And the comfort is the biggest one. Here, I'm talking to a group of Americans talking how you should be uncomfortable. I'm surprised I'm not getting pelted with rocks right now. You should live your life uncomfortably. If it makes you uneasy, guess what you should do? Walk right into it. Why? Because if God's got your back, why would you be afraid? You know, I just talked on YouTube about how homosexuality is a sin. Oh, well, I might get canceled at work. That might happen. I mean, it really could. They had the whole re-education, doctrination stuff going on and all that. And here I am up here talking about how it's not right, because you can't love like that. Because love ultimately gives. And what does love do? It brings new life into the world where it didn't exist before. Because if God didn't love creation, the creation he made, how would any of us be here? And if he loves us, what are we doing? Right? If Dad's trying to push us into the next thing we should be in, and we're digging our heels in and saying, no, who's wrong? Because I tell you, God's not. I mean, I've seen my fair share of trials and things in life. And I'd say you guys have too. And the greatest thing, I mean, the most beautiful thing, I think, is when you have an older person who sees those trials in life, and then you have a younger person who sees a trial that is slightly less, you know, like something that the older person has already been through. And the older person encourages that younger person. Says, you know what? That's not really that big of a deal, but I'm here with you for it. Not diminishing the younger person's problem, because when I was younger, I mean, you guys, you guys remember the first things you went through in life, like going to school for the first time? I mean, that's really far back. Okay, let me get a little bit further. Okay, you got to go to college, or like you're about to go into the workforce. You've got to leave dad's house. You've got to do something that's brand new. You remember that feeling? It's like, what am I supposed to do? I have no idea. There's no direction in my life. I don't know up from down, left from right. I'm confused and lost, just like a bunch of people in the wilderness who are confused and lost. And every time we get direction when we're younger, what do? Just like the people in the wilderness, right? It's like, my dad doesn't know what he's talking about. He was an authoritarian. I'm shedding off that authoritarian. We're going to be new and different. And I find myself doing the same thing as an adult with my kids, right? Allowance, trying to get them to do chores, making them pick up their socks, or at least every other day, just working, trying to make them into adults, adult humans, to understand what love really is. Because I think if without my children, I would have never truly understood, right? How much I was willing to give, how far I was willing to go, how much time I was willing to spend, right? When I was younger, it was all about getting the new car and getting the shiny things and chasing after objects. Now that I'm older, it's like, well, do those things really mean anything? And if they do, why am I not interested at all? Because the things I think that really mean stuff is the relationships we have. Because what's the commandment? The greatest commandment. Come on, guys, you should be able to recite it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. I'm going to dig into that a little more, okay? Because love is the ultimate act of giving. It is the ultimate act of giving. And we know that by Jesus showed us, he showed the world love by doing what? Giving everything that he had. Everything. Every last drop of who he was. The firstborn of creation gave everything he had for the creation. And here we are, sitting talking about him and trying to understand what love is in the modern context of Facebook and social media. You want to find out the most unloving people in the world? Go to a place where people don't have faces, where their identity is completely masked behind something, right? And then you find out the true nature of most human beings. Because what do? The moment you don't know who I am, I reveal my true identity. What is it? In the darkness, right? To the light. So when these people on social media, when they say these evil things about other people, and I mean, I don't care if it's Joe Biden they're talking about or Donald Trump. When these people say untrue, evil things about other people, what are they actually doing? They're showing the true nature of humanity. I've always felt that it was more important for me to listen to what my enemies have to say about me than it was for the people who act like they care about me. Because enemies are motivated to destroy you, right? That's their sole motivation. And out of that, they're willing to give everything they got to try to destroy you. Well, my primary example is Jesus himself. His enemies were willing to give everything they had. I mean, the high priest, what did he do to his clothes? What was he giving up in that moment? His status and title. The only thing that gave him any kind of power and authority, the thing that he clearly loved the most, when he tore those clothes, what did he give up? Everything that he was. So, really, Jesus ended up turning an act of hatred into the most powerful act of love that mankind has ever seen. He flipped the script, right? Like, that's how awesome God is. Is that however evil that you think you can be, or the most wretched thing you can think of, the person you are steering that against, the person that you aim that evil slander towards, or that malicious thought, is the only one who truly loved you in the first place. That's what I can't get secular people to understand, This is the way the Christian mindset works, is why we're kind to people, even our enemies, is because why? Because the evil things that come from my heart are directed where? To the only person who truly loved me. That's where they're directed at. Because what did he take on? The evil of the world. And if that evil comes out of my heart, then where is it going? Straight at him. And if I cared about him at all, guess what? I would keep a mind on not doing that. So when you look at the Shema, I'm coming back. I got off on a rabbit trail there. Okay, you guys good? Everybody still with me? You good? Okay, now I'm going to try to bore you again. All right, here we go. When you get into the Shema, it starts with listen, 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 Israel. Israel's the people. Okay, so here's what's really interesting. It's listen, listen, listen. I'm going to do it just straight word for word translation. Listen intently, people who wrestle with God. The mighty strength is the one. The mighty strength is your Lord. And you shall give with power all your heart, all your breath, and all your muchness. For the Lord is your God. That's the word for word translation. Now I'm going to try to make it make sense in English, okay? I'm going to try to walk through it. Because Hebrew is a very intuitive language. It's intuitive in the fact that it uses characters next to other characters. Like I mentioned before, when you put strength before strength, you got God, right? When you put strength before giving, you've got love. So when you take heart, it's not actually the idea of heart. It's not actually like this pumping thing in your chest, okay? Heart encompasses two things in the Hebrew ideology. It encompasses the fact that you think and that you feel. So your thoughts and your feelings should be directed toward giving toward who? God, the strong strength, right? So the power of your thought and the power of your feelings and your emotion should be directed where? To God, all the time. All the time. Now, if we're honest with ourselves, how much time do we actually spend thinking about that? Like I wake up in the morning, I look outside, and I'm not like, if I'm honest, I got up this morning and I was like, oh man, I'm so tired. Because me and my wife, we went out, we had this band competition, and I might be giving too much private information, but we had this band competition, and there's like 500 bands at the Lakeway Christian Place. And we're up there for like 5 hours waiting for my daughter to perform when she could have just given me a time frame. And I'll be there this time, Dad. I had to sit through all these other kids doing 2-minute drum lines that here I am griping. Right? I'm really taking on the Hebrew story right now, aren't I? So I'm there forever, it seems like. And then I go to a restaurant and it takes forever. And I'm just like at the edge of my rope here. And I'm like, I don't get any sleep. And I wake up and and then God hits me with this right here. Right? And in any of that process of the way that my night worked last night, I don't ever get 2 days off in a row. It's rare that I get like a whole day off, right? Between vendors and all these other people. I get 2 days off, and then my 2 days off are spent what? Nursing baby goats, watching bands that I don't even really care about play, and they do this and that and this and that, right? All over the place. And I'm like thinking, God, what's the point of this? And then he's got to remind me. He throws the Shema at me again. So here's what it is. How much time did I spend in the last 24 hours thinking about where my thoughts and feelings should be directed? 0, if I'm completely honest. If you guys are honest with yourself, how much time did you spend? Did you play with the idea? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we failed right there. I know I did, okay? I'm the guy. I failed right there. Because I was busy thinking about, man, I could be sitting on the couch. I could be, watching a documentary. I know that's weird. I don't watch sports. I watch documentaries. Okay? It helps me relax to watch somebody else have to do all the thinking for me. Okay? So I love it. I love it. I love watching documentaries. I used to think that it was because I used to tell people, this is what I used to tell people. I used to tell people that it was because I felt like I was getting more knowledge, right? But really, I was thinking about it just now, and God hit me with that one. He's like, the only reason you watch documentaries is so that you don't have to do the thinking, right? It's great. I love it. So now that every time I watch a documentary, I'm gonna be like, turn the lights out, nobody's on upstairs, and do my thing. My dad does that with sports, I think, but I do it with the History Channel. So anyway, so you love God with all your heart, and the heart encompasses your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions and your thoughts. And we have a tendency to say, well, okay, Adam, Bible teacher, whatever you call yourself, dude up there on stage in the blue shirt, whatever it is. Well, isn't the heart wicked above all things? Yeah, you're right. It's deceitful. Because the heart and the mind are always constantly wrestling with each other, right? It's like the heart says, hey, you know what? I've been working hard all day long. You need to sit down and watch Battlefield 360 or something, right? That's what the heart says. And then my brain's like, you know what? I'm tired of fighting with you. I've had to think all day, so I'm going to shut down. I'm going to go on idle mode. And then guess what? I've missed the point. I missed the point completely. I've completely missed the point. Because the heart and the mind are supposed to work together, right? We're supposed to recognize our feelings in our mind and say, well, why am I angry right now? You guys ever do that? I tried that exercise for a whole week. And then yesterday I failed, right? Because I wasn't doing it. But if you actually recognize an emotion, right? This is harder for guys than it is for you ladies, okay? Because you guys are feeling machines. You guys know what's going on all the time with your feelings. I mean, often my wife will describe things to me. Well, I felt like that person was going to. I felt like this. I felt like that. If you see two men have a conversation, it's like, yeah, this is the way it was, right? We're more facts oriented, and ladies are more feeling oriented. So sometimes I need my wife to help me decipher what my emotions are and where I'm going. It's a good thing God gave me a wife, because half the time I don't know what's going on inside of that thing. I just figure it beats blood so I can think, right? And you guys are thinking our brain is so that we can feel, right? That's the difference between men and women. I mean, I love you guys. You guys are awesome because you understand love way quicker than we ever could. At the same time, we understand how to break down a 1966 Chevy all the way down to the bolt mains and not get distracted from the process, right? Okay. We work together. It's great that God put us together, isn't it? So our mind and our heart should think together. They should operate together. And outside of marriage, I don't know how to do that. I can't figure it out. Maybe somebody more wise than me has figured that out, and I'm running out of time here. But I got to move on to 3 more words. So maybe somebody wiser than me has figured it out, but a lot of times I have to ask my wife. I'm like, you know what? I got angry the other day because here's the things that happened. Here's the storyline, and then here's why I got angry. And she's like, oh, you're just feeling insecure that you did this and that and this, right? And I'm like, you're a magician, right? You're magical. How you do that? Does anyone ever talk to their significant other about the things that they felt through the day? Like, ladies usually love it when you do that. Like my wife, she perks up and all of a sudden she is listening like, I don't know. Like I have a German Shepherd, and when I say Rena, her ears, they pop straight up and she's like, alert, like what am I supposed to be getting? That's what my wife does. Same thing when I start talking about my feelings. Well, I got angry today. I start using emotional words and she's like, really? But if I start talking about things like, well, we were up 4.5% in the thing, and she's just, I can tell. Same thing that I do to her when she starts talking about feelings. She tones out because she doesn't speak that language. But we can actually complement each other in that fact that heart and mind should work together, but I have yet met a person who can get them both to work together. There's no quote, and I can't, you'll have to forgive me, I don't know who said it, but the longest distance in a man's life is the 12 inches between their heart and their mind to get the two to sync together. And I think you ladies get the heart thing figured out for sure. And we got the mind thing figured out for sure. If we could just figure out a way to communicate on the same level, then I think we'd have something going. But all those thoughts and feelings are supposed to be directed where? toward giving toward God. So when you think about it, is God asking for money? No. Okay, Isaiah explains that a little bit later. But then we move on to the next thing. What else are you supposed to love God with? All your soul? Well, that's the next, we're in Deuteronomy. That's with all your soul. Now, I've said this to you guys before. The Hebrew word for soul is nephesh, right? Now, what's your nephesh? Yeah, put your hand in front of your face and say nephesh, nephesh. And you can feel it. You can feel what the ancient Hebrews were talking about. You know it. Well, what does Jesus say about it? He says, well, what comes out of the mouth? That's good. All kinds of evil things. That's where deceit comes from. Adultery, slander. All those things come out of where? Peter doesn't like that thing either because it's a little rudder, right? And I'm sorry, James. I apologize. James, that little rudder can take this whole ship and run it right into a rock. Every time. Why? Because what direction is it pointing? Where is the rudder pointing? Right? It's never pointing where it's supposed to. Because we get in a conversation with somebody, and I'm guilty of this too. Oh, did you hear what Joe Biden said today? I guess they're laughing, right? Because he did say something silly. But what did we just do? What did we just do? We just tore somebody else down. Why? And what direction do all of our evil thoughts and actions go? Where do they go? Who did he take them for? If he just took them for me, then I completely missed the point of why God so loved his son that he gave for the whole. Or was it just me? Maybe if it was just me, I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to have to exclude everybody. This is a me-only club. But love is not a black hole, is it? It does not consume, it gives. So if we're supposed to love God with all of our breath, why is it that we're spending all this time wasting it? So, okay. Now the next word is you're supposed to love him with all your what? Oh, this is one of my favorites. I'm going to catch you guys in a trap. I got the trap laid. It's good. With all your strength. Well, some of you have it translated as strength. Some of you have it translated as will. Yeah, well, that's interesting, isn't it? If you want to know that somebody hasn't got something or they've not truly figured it out yet, look at how many different translations for one word there are in your English Bible, because we don't have a one-for-one comparison to the next word. Strength. The word is not strength, because I already told you what the word for strength was, right? You put power and strength together, or you put strength and strength together, you got God's name, Elohim. Elohim is the word for strength. The next word that happens in the Shema is miod. Miod. And I'll give you some examples real quick because I'm seriously running out of time. And this is my favorite word to try to explain to people, especially secular people, because they never get it. It's the look on their face. It's always like, who? What? Who? Well, yeah. So anyway, you totally thrown somebody for a loop. I could see totally what Jesus was talking about when he said, they asked him, why do you tell parables? And he said, so I could confuse the people. That's how he responded. He said, so they'll be confused. Because only the people who actually spend time thinking about it will understand it. Because I can lay out the facts for you, but the understanding you have to get on your own, right? That's why the facts matter. So anyway, miod, interesting word. God created the heavens and the earth. On the seventh day, he rested from what he did, and he saw what he had created, and he said it was miod good. Okay? Jacob, when he went up to live with his uncle, he had flocks. And those flocks produced more. And he had miod flocks. Okay? Are you guys getting close? I can see the question marks above the heads. Okay? David went to battle. And he was miod good at defeating his enemies. Okay? We don't have a one-for-one comparison to the word. Very is close. Very good, right? Because when you read Genesis chapter 1 and you see on the seventh day God seen all that he created and he said it was very good, okay? And when you read about David, his flocks were great in number, right? They were much in number, or great is the way it's translated, I believe, in the King James Version. And the word has, you have to look to the nuance of the word and the way it's used in several different passages to get kind of a good definition of what the word is. It's kind of like everything that encompasses you, but at the same time, the things that you could be too. How about that? You guys get that? It's a hard definition. It's a hard one to explain to people. But if you think about it like this, everything that you are now and the potential that you could be. That's how much you're supposed to love God. That's what you love God with. The person I am now and the person I know I will be. Because what is God constantly doing? Well, if you ask me, he's always pushing us into understanding something that we couldn't on our own, like love, right? And I circle back to what love is. Because who are we supposed to love? The Lord our God. And who else? Because Jesus sums it up. Our neighbor as ourselves. So when we talk about the thing, so why does he say put it on your doorpost? Why does he say put it on the gates of your city? Because who do you represent when you go out of those things? Who you represent? And it's not a threat to be silent, which I took it for a while. It's more intentional. You have to be more intentional than that. Because the person I want to be and the person I am now, like, trust me, when I look in the mirror, I'm not like, you got it going on, right? I don't do that. I don't do that at all. Because I know that somebody's still working. His hands are still on the wheel, if you know what I mean, the potter's wheel, making the pot. And I know he's not done with me until, we get to hang out and I get to ask him the questions like, why did my truck, my daughter's truck, and, all the things I gripe about, why did all this stuff happen all at once? Like, I didn't get it. I don't understand it. Maybe you could enlighten me now. But he won't be done with me until that day. And the fact that I face those trials and that adversity in my life means that, what? It's not a sign that he doesn't care. It's actually the opposite, that he does. Because every time I suffer, guess who's suffering right there with me? And every time I throw out that evil out of my heart that comes through my mouth, out of my mind, well, it starts, Jesus says, it starts in your mind and then travels into your heart and then out of your mouth. So there's a long journey there of things that you should have thought about or felt or did before that evil ever left. But we do it almost like it's natural. And we never think about the whole process. Ladies, you know this. Jealousy, envy. I mean, I'm not just picking on ladies, because us, we are just as capable of it. And there is a long journey that evil has to take in order for it to leave our mouth or through our hand. And when God says, you'll put this mark on your hand, why do you think he says that? It's through the tongue and the hand. Those are the only two ways we affect the world around us, don't we? And we can manipulate it so bad, can't we? And shape it into what we want it to be. What a terrible power we all have. And God gave it to us so that he could teach us, because we don't know. In all reality, we're all just a bunch of children trying to learn what love really is. And the only example we have is the one who gave his hands to be nailed to the cross, because we were too selfish to realize that he was there for us in the first place. Because who's the one who put him there? Well, we did. And every time we throw something out against, I don't care who it is, it doesn't matter. Because who did God create? Everybody. You think Pharaoh, you go back to the story of Moses. How many bad words did Moses have to say about Pharaoh? None, did he? What about God? How many bad words did God have to say about Pharaoh? Try to find it. Good luck. Because God doesn't say anything bad about him. He just says, here's the deal. Here's what it is. You're evil. Everybody knows it. You can see it in the story, but God never has to say it. Because here's the nature of evil. It's self-destructive. It is a black hole. Because what does Pharaoh do that's so evil? He throws the babies into the river, right? Well, where does Pharaoh end up? Throwing himself into a giant river, even bigger. So what do we have to do about evil? We just have to watch our tongues, don't we? And our hearts and our minds, and remember that there's a reason he told us to put them there. Because he says it twice, if you think about it. You read through it again. I know I'm running out of time. I still got 3 minutes, I think. You guys good? Because he tells you to write these things on your heart. Keep them in your heart, right? Keep them on your hand, and keep them on your forehead. So he repeats the same thing twice, doesn't he? He goes, you shall love the Lord your God with your heart, which is your heart and your mind, with all the words that you say, and with all the person that you are now and the person that you will be to come. And then he says, take the words that I've said, love me with all your heart, soul, and strength, and write them where? On your hand, on your forehead, on your heart. And where else? Because he throws in a zinger there toward the end. He says, put them on your doorpost. Put them on your gates. Because why? That's the place where we go into the world. Because the place we have, the place we own, is our safe space where, it's our little Eden. Every man's house is his castle, right? And that we have time to think about those things. But when we step out into the world there, somebody cuts you off in traffic. How much are you thinking about what's going through your head or your heart, right? And to think about a thought, that is just an interesting thing to me. I've sat and thought about thoughts all the time, where they come from and how did I get them and what is it? I could spend hours wasting away watching documentaries on the mind. But I digress, and I'll end with a word of prayer. And then if you guys have rocks or vegetables that you want to throw at me, it's fine, because I just told a bunch of Americans that you shouldn't be comfortable ever. And Americans are the most comfortable people ever. See, I kind of did the Shema thing backwards and forwards. Heavenly Father, I thank you for gathering us here today. Father, give us eyes